Is Bitcoin forming a parabola to $100,000? In today's video, I'm going to investigate a few patterns from 2017 and 2020, and I'm going to show you how 2024 may be setting us up for that advance to $100,000, which I mentioned in my last video. If you didn't get to see it, you can watch it here. But Bitcoin loves to form parabolas during halving years. So in basically 2017 and 2020, we saw parabolic advances on both of them. So I'm going to jump into some charts here. We're going to look at parabolas, what they mean, and kind of where we may be at in the parabola now, 2024. So this is what a parabola looks like. There's typically 4 bases, but on the third base is typically where you see the highest acceleration point. So if we go to 2017, what you can see is we had that base 1, which was in that $1,000 range, which we chopped around for quite some time. Then we had the base 2, and all of these kind of dips, I remember them pretty clearly. I traded them. A lot of them were around SegWit and Bitcoin Cash and the forks. So that's where we see a lot of these dips. But base 3 is typically where we see the greatest and fastest parabolic advance. So base 3, we basically went from 3,000 to 20,000. And the halving date was, if we look at the halving dates, 2012, November 28th, 2012, and then 2016 was July 9th, 2020 was May 11th, and it's predicted to be around April 18th for the 2024 halving date. And if you don't know what the halving is, it's basically where the amount of Bitcoin produced in a block by a Bitcoin miner gets cut in half. So Satoshi Nakamoto kind of coded this into the white paper to basically create a deflationary asset. So over time, less and less gets produced, and hopefully more and more gets held in wallets and so on and so forth. So instead of like fiat where it's 1 divided by infinity, this is 1 divided by 21 million. But instead of more getting printed every year, which is an inflationary asset, which is fiat, which is more of a the idea is modern monetary theory, MMT, which is, the more that gets printed, the more that the money gets moved into investable assets like stocks and real estate. So it's good for the economy to have an asset that kind of inflates over time. That's the idea. But Bitcoin was founded after the economic collapse in 2008, and it's formed on the premise of supply and demand. So as we look at this parabolic advance and we look at 2017, we had the halving, which creates essentially a reduction in supply. And we had a parabolic advance after that. And then if we go to 2020, we had the COVID collapse, which saw the price of Bitcoin drop all the way back down to around $4,000. And then we had the halving event, which again, halving events are delayed impact events. I mentioned this on Twitter earlier today. If you don't follow me on Twitter, it's just x.com/Jacob Canfield. I'd highly recommend following me there. I post my updates, thoughts, analysis on the markets every day. But everyone kind of thinks that the halving event, it's more of it's very underwhelming up to the event, but the delayed impact of it cannot be overstated. It does create a significant reduction in supply on the market, and if demand exceeds that supply, then we typically see supply shock and kind of price catapult off that. So 2020, we saw the same sort of parabolic advance, base 1, base 2, base 3. After base 3, price went up pretty significantly, 224%, all the way up to 60,000. And then we kind of chopped around until we eventually fell. Now, moving over into 2024 is where we're at right now. And it looks like, to me, we're forming another very clear parabolic advance. Now, we also have the golden ratio multipliers, which also give us those top, and the 111 and the 350 are very far apart. There's a lot of things that are kind of indicating that, this may be similar to the other ones, okay? So if this holds true, the halving is actually kind of at the, maybe base 4, the tail end. We also have the ETF, which if you look at the ETF numbers, it's consuming the supply. Like you have BlackRock, Fidelity, VanEck. These ETFs are kind of consuming the supply in the market. We do have a lot of overhang from the Mt. Gox that's getting released soon, from the GBTC unlocks and FTX. And also we may see some Silk Road being sold by the US government. And we also have some Celsius unlocks that are happening. So there is some supply that's hitting the market. But the question is the halving and is the ETF that's seeing a lot of supply getting eaten off the market, is that enough to kind of swallow that supply overhang? So again, I think these are delayed events that we may see, again, more bullishness afterwards. But what's really interesting about this kind of date around the halving and where we may see a potential top based on the golden ratio multipliers, some of these other things that I mentioned in the last video, is that we also have the Ethereum ETF approaching. And the final end date approval for that is May 23rd, 2024. So might we see a top kind of come around that date and more money trickle more into the ETF of Ethereum, Ethereum betas? We've got the eigenlayer upcoming, which is pulling Ethereum off the market en masse. We're seeing a significant amount of Ethereum getting staked right now for airdrops, and especially the eigenlayer airdrop and some of the other protocols like Swell, Renzo, KelpDAO, some of these other airdrop protocols. So the question is are we at base 3? And if we are at base 3, then typically these tend to give us that bounce level, pretty significantly. So at minimum, I think we'll probably see all-time highs pretty soon. But the question for me, in kind of my analysis, is, are we entering a new cycle? Is this similar to the gold ETF that we saw? And are we going to basically enter into a hyper parabolic advance versus just a traditional parabolic advance, which I don't know if we've ever seen that so far, but Bitcoin is by far the best performing asset of the last decade since 2009. It's up, 1,000,000% from 2009 when it was created plus. And so the question is are we entering a brand new cycle? And that question kind of can only be answered is once we hit, past all-time highs, once we hit 100,000, once we hit this halving, is $1 million in the works for Bitcoin. It's one of the most scarcest commodities in the world. There's only 21 million ever created. We have government debt at all-time highs. It's expected that our interest on our debt's going to be over $1 trillion. We're kind of hitting the level where we're at, 33 trillion, I think, at US debt. But every fiat currency in the world is also built on inflationary mechanics, and they're kind of all hyper printing right now.
Simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did.
Because of COVID printing, because of some other things. And so I think it is interesting that where we're at in the market in what Bitcoin kind of represents. It's, as Obama mentioned in a speech recently, it's a Swiss bank account in your pocket. It's government agnostic. It's censorship resistant. It's all the things that you want in a currency. And so the question is kind of where do we go from here? Hope you guys like this video. It's kind of a parallel to my last video. Let me know in the comments what you think. Is 100,000 the top, or are we going to blow past that and hit $1 million in the next 5 to 10 years? I'm hodling my Bitcoin. I don't sell my Bitcoin. I do, obviously trade on perpetuals, take hedges and stuff like that. But let me know what you guys think. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe if you're not. And again, follow me on Twitter for more updates. See you guys.